Awesome.
Real quick, I think I said the website wrong, so I'm going to say it one more time. One Cowboy, singular, stand for freedom.
Yes.
You can go there and donate to the wrongful death suit that is going on right now, and that's really, really important. But so the trials, right? I was arrested, and I'm in solitary confinement. I have this indictment, this creative, exercising creative writing, basically the government's theory, conspiracy theory, as to what happened that day. And I got an education throughout this process of what the legal system really is, and the conviction factory that it really is. They value their 97% conviction rate, and they'll do anything to keep it. The first thing that they really did was they start to use the filings in court, your motions, your arguments back and forth in writing to the judge. These go on what's called the docket, and the media uses that docket, and the prosecutors know the media uses that docket. So what it becomes is basically a direct line press release for the prosecution's narrative.
Regardless of whether it's true or not?
Most likely not.
Yeah.
Most likely not. There is no bar of proof in a detention hearing. I learned that. I looked at my lawyer when they said, Eric Parker, this is what they told the judge, Eric Parker travels around the country in his free time matching force with the federal government.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like I said, it's an exercise in creative writing, and they write this nonsense out, and the judge reads it and goes, "Oh dear, I guess we better hold them." And we're seeing that again now with the Sixth, right? They're writing the same kind of creative writing in detaining these people from the Sixth. Because a guy lives with his brother, and they have 3 rifles in a safe. They're calling it, a danger, and he needs to be detained from the Sixth. It's insane, and it's very similar to what we all went through with these trials, right? So they start putting out their press releases through the motions and through the docket, and what happens is the rest of America starts to read the one-line press release, mainstream media's version of what's going on, and what that led to was my wife being fired in the small community we lived in. I was arrested by the FBI on Main Street driving to work. 17 guys, tack gear, 45 to the head, the whole 9 yards, like I was El Chapo. And she ended up getting fired. But what that ended up doing was actually kind of beneficial to us, because it afforded her the ability to come down there as we started these hearings and started these trials. And I think that has a lot to do with why I was able to walk out of there, was because my wife came and sat in every hearing, in every trial, every day, and took notes, and then went downstairs at the bottom of the federal building there in Las Vegas and did a live stream.
Wow.
And she talked about everything that was occurring inside the rooms, inside the courtroom.
So she was acting more as a journalist and reporter than the actual journalists and reporters were.
Yeah, I mean, there was actually times where she would see on the news that they were writing about us as if they were there that day, and she knew for a fact they weren't there all day. They just waited and looked at the docket and then ran with the government's line. So that part of it was really big. That having another avenue of information flowing out of that private chamber that is the courtroom, federal courtroom, is so important, because if not, the media is just going to run with the narrative that they put out in those motions. And so we learned that really quickly, and she continued to do that. The thing that they try to do is break you, right? I mean, we were facing 100 years, over 100 years if we got all convicted of all of the charges. Things like conspiracy to commit an offense against the United States of America, extortion, I mean, serious charges, 20 years each. And then they come to you as you're sitting there in federal detention for 6 months, no court date yet, no idea of what's going to happen. And they say, listen, here's your plea agreement. It's for 10 years. You can go do 10 years and take a felony. Or you can go to court and we're going to convict you of 100 and you're going to die in prison.
That's
the line.
Blows my mind when you think about being in that position now. For all of you listeners that don't quite, I mean, if you're just tuning in or just getting on air, Eric Parker here took stand, I guess, in the Bundy standoff, or I guess went prone, and made, he stood up for what he believed in, and the federal government came after him. And if you just heard that, where essentially he was facing either 100 years, essentially life. I mean, a life in prison, or just admit that he was wrong for 10.
Even though the sheriff decided and determined at the event that they were in the right.
Correct. So
yes, and made them leave, right? And that was big part of my charges were the idea that they could not complete their job because their version of the story was I had a rifle trained on them and they had to run away. And I held them at gunpoint until the cows were released, right? That's the media's narrative and the prosecution's narrative.
So your first court case, right? How did you make it through that first one then? Like, what was?
So we actually get into court, and I start to learn the real workings of it, and I learned what a motion of limine was, and the motion of limine, it basically, to sum it up, limits the testimony in the trial, and it's used now as a tool to stop the jury from hearing certain things. In the motion of limine that the prosecution presented to the judge, they requested that we were not allowed to talk about the militarization of the BLM. We were not allowed to talk about the assaults, the killing of the cattle. We were not allowed to talk about. I wasn't allowed to say Constitution.
Jeez.
I wasn't allowed to say First Amendment. I was not allowed to say Second Amendment. They actually had a hearing where they kicked the jury out and fought about whether or not they can take away my Constitution. I had a pocket Constitution with me the whole time, right? My pocket Constitution and my Bible. And the prosecution wanted them both taken away from me because they said I wasn't taking the proceedings seriously because I was reading the Bible or the Constitution the whole time they were talking.
Whoa. So, not mean to cut you off here, but I think this is very important to say again so that everyone can hear you. So this is the United States of America here. The U.S. government
allegedly.
Prosecutors are saying that you should not have been able to, because you weren't paying attention or something, wanted to take away your pocket Constitution and your Bible. Literally the first two on the Bill of Rights.
Yep.
I mean, just
and what I was clinging on to as I was looking the devil in the eye, right? The one thing I had in my hand. They will do anything they can to break you and destroy you. Now even the judge knew it would have been a little too far to take my Bible, but she did determine that the Constitution was not needed, and I was not allowed to read it, I guess. So I had to leave it face down on the table, right? Eventually, because so that's how far they go to limit what the jury is gonna understand and know, right? Now, when you get sworn in up there, it's the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God, right?
Yep.
They make that impossible. as impossible as they can. And the thing of it was, again, in my case, government is arrogant, and everything they do ends up backfiring usually. So these tactics they took with us in the courtroom, I think they backfired. I think, eventually my second trial. So I went through the first trial. It was a hung jury.
So hold on, right? They tried you twice. This is something that's important that I don't want to just skip over. How did they manage that?
They did. So end of the first trial, it was a hung jury. 8-4. 8 people wanted to acquit me, 4 wanted to convict me. So it was a hung jury. I did get acquitted of the conspiracy charges in the first trial, but the rest of them, it was a hung jury, hung charges. So now at that point, I think I won, right? They failed to convince a jury that I was guilty within a reasonable doubt or whatever, right? So I thought I won. Now, not so much. It's back to federal detention, and they argue about what's next. The judge and the prosecution and your lawyer. They decided then that they would try us again, which I thought was double jeopardy.
Yeah.
Twice, life and limb. And they decided, somewhere in legalese that they have the right to try again. If I'm not acquitted, then I'm not acquitted, and I can still be tried, right? How that works, I've still tried to get lawyers to explain that to me, and I don't understand. But I did. At that point, I went and looked up how many times can they do this, right? That's what you start thinking, sitting there looking at your cell wall. How many times can they do this? Do they just get to keep going until they get it right? And I went and looked it up in the law library, and the case that I found with the 6 trials, 6 federal trials they did to one guy.
Wow.
Until they finally convicted him.
The same thing.
Same kind of thing, right? And I forget what his charges were. He may have actually been doing something bad or something. I don't know. But
so you go into the second court case, and what
second trial?
Yeah. So what did they change up this time? I thought that was really interesting to hear too.
Well, they stopped the evidence that they put forward. They didn't put any audio on the videos, right? And they only let you see the pictures. They limited what they showed the jury even more, right? And then they also thought that the jury last time just didn't understand, or they would have obviously convicted me. So the judge decides to offer the jurors questions at the end of each witness. The jurors get to write a question and ask questions through writing at the end of each witness. Well, this too backfired on them because we were able to tell what the jurors were thinking even more in the second trial, right? Oh, yeah. When your jury says, hey, what about the Fifth Amendment and reimbursing him for his private property when they're talking about Cliven, you know that your jury's starting to get it, right? Mm-hmm. So that was actually kind of helpful for us, but they tried to just change up the board, change up the rules and readjust to where they could get that edge. And ultimately what saved me the first time was going on the stand and telling my own story, right? Talking to the 12 other human beings and telling them what happened that day. And so it was the same with the second. We weren't allowed to talk about anything, though. And I got up on the stand, and my lawyer started asking me where I was looking and what I was paying attention to while I was standing on the bridge. And I knew that I was not allowed to say snipers, right? That was part of the motion of limine. I was not allowed to use the word sniper.
Because there were snipers. Because the FBI had their own
because
snipers.
There was snipers.
Right.
Right, exactly. And when somebody's looking at you through a sniper scope, the best thing you can do is get behind some concrete, and they know that that's common sense.
What?
Right.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's cover and concealment, the difference. Anyway, continue.
Yes, there is a difference. Learn it, children. They have. So I get back up on the stand in the second trial, and I figure this is my only way to save my life again. is tell my side of the story and look these people in the eye and tell them why I did what I did and what happened and what I saw. I'm trying to do that. So I know I can't say sniper, but my lawyer's trying to get me to tell the jury where I was paying attention, because there's a whole group of law enforcement officers, federal agents, that say I was pointing a gun at them that were way over on the left. I couldn't even see these guys, and they all testified that I pointed the gun right at them and everything. So I'm trying to point out that, no, I'm actually really paying attention to the top of the mesa where these snipers are. So I say up into the, I didn't even get to the word right. I said up into the, I was about to say right. They objected. The prosecution objects. The judge sustains the objection, removes the jury, and kicks me off the stand. Tells the jury to dismiss everything I've said and throws me off the stand.
Wow. That's...
I didn't even get to sniper. I didn't even get to, I was just going to say up and to the right is where I was looking. That's all I was able to say. I wanted to say I was staring at the snipers pointing guns at me, but I wasn't able to.
Hi, my name's Eric Parker. I'm running for state senate here in Idaho. If you'd like to know more about my campaign, go to parkerforidaho.com. You can also follow the campaign on Telegram and on Facebook. We'll put the links in the descriptions below.